Fat Boys Week 9 was a little more exciting than I think in the previous week, or at least in terms of actual football upsets. How that translated to points, I think we're going to see. There wasn't a lot of nail biters. If you were watching the games, by the key games, as soon as they were done, we kind of knew what was going on league-wise, but that doesn't mean that it's not a little spicier once we start getting to the actual standings. So NFL first, then we get to our league. After the last little while of just the better teams almost always winning and only a few kind of upsets or runs, I guess we had a bunch more in week 9, didn't we? The Panthers, are they actually okay when they have an okay quarterback? Pittsburgh, who went from looking not great defensively, was definitely good enough defensively. Minnesota occasionally plays okay, I guess. At least the Lions think so. I don't really know if there's like a return to form or exactly what went on in terms of point spread, but at least there was a lot more games to talk about, and yet we almost always end up talking about the same game every single year. I probably could have gone back to last year's video talking Bills and Chiefs, and the same thing just seems to keep happening, and no one really kind of makes a reaction to it. The Bills won in the regular season game. That was fine. It was a good game. I mean, the Chiefs aren't looking amazing, but they've been playing well enough. But we just kind of assume that the Chiefs are going to make the playoffs and that the Bills are going to lose to them in the playoffs because that just seems to be what happens. So there wasn't really any kind of shuffling of the order. The only thing I'll say, though, is the Chiefs technically, I believe, are 8th right now and only 7 make it. So they might want to start playing like the Redwoods are supposed to be as opposed to the Ficuses that have been coming out recently. Other than that, we had a pretty electric game in Chicago and Cincinnati going at it, and you got to feel for Cincinnati. I'm actually starting to wonder if Joe Burrow maybe isn't a great quarterback, but just anyone in Cincinnati could be a great quarterback. Flacco, it's not like, I mean, he did win Comeback Player of the Year not too long ago, but he was brutal for the Browns. But then again, it is the Browns, and I do have to make a weekly reference of them being crap. But at the same time, he can't be happy. He's putting up amazing statistics, and yet they're just finding ways to win. It's almost like instead of just re-signing everybody on the same key offensive positions, they maybe should have thought about defense, but whatever. Just hit some dingers. On the other side, too, we started to get some stuff creeping into our fantasy realm there. We had Washington's big injury. Daniels, that was kind of gross. Kraft, I was too nice to him last week, and then he hurts himself pretty badly after pretty much winning a couple weeks in the last few. He definitely lost it for some people. We had some trade deadline stuff, which normally doesn't happen. The Jets are pretty convinced that they're rebuilding, and actually now they're going to have 5 number 1 picks in the next 2 years. And that's the second time they can say that in the last 5 years. 21 and 22, they had 5 first-round picks. And actually, had they picked a better quarterback, we might not be talking about them of doing it again. So lots to think about and lots to talk about. Coming into Week 10, fantasy-wise, we are really getting to the crux of our season here, and not a great week for probably the second most impactful bye week of the year. We had Buyapalooza with the 6 teams. We only have 4, but 3 of the 4, Tennessee, if you've been banking on them, that's kind of shame on you. But Kansas City, Cincinnati, and Dallas, these have been a lot of our offensive production over the last few weeks. I mean, we can talk a lot about Dallas and Cincinnati not stopping anyone, but they sure were scoring a lot. So this week's scores in a super, super important week might be all over the map. Might be having to go to the bench, maybe even the waiver wire. Either way, let's actually stop talking about football because now we're getting to the point where fantasy is where it's at. Let's go to our leagues. Looks like Mark's little run there is kind of taking a bit of a pause. He had a shot here, but then Will obviously went off. He was our number 1 scorer in the week. Now, just because I was talking about Mark, let's finish that one. He did have the running back 5 in Jacobs, but not a whole lot else. Well underperformed on most key categories here and just didn't really put it together, although JSN is pretty much running away with the receiver of the year right now. For Will's side, he had the quarterback 5 lining up. He also had the RB2 Enrico. He kind of came back. Laporta was the tight end 4, so lots of great decisions. And realistically, like I say, most times when someone goes off for a few more points, just not a lot of huge letdowns. A lot of weird defenses this week. Most of our defenses were not the ones that went off. Not many people were starting Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Tennessee, Arizona, or Dallas, so we're not going to see a lot of them. But in this particular case, didn't matter for Will. 138, top of the week. Huge timing-wise, needed that to stay into 3rd. If Yahoo was going to be right, this was going to come down to the wire. They weren't, and it wasn't. Ben unfortunately underperformed. Now, things looked to go fairly well at one point in time, especially and most specifically when the Rams played the Saints. Those were the guys that you got points. That was a wide receiver 5 and running back 4 combo. Your defense and kicker, as I mentioned, they weren't huge this week in general, but though you did just fine. So as your skill positions that lay down, DK Metcalf, obviously Gibbs, pretty much the worst one of the year. So really didn't need those ones because you could have used it. On the flip side, Chaz is a monster win. We're going to see when we get to the standings. It is really going to come down to these last couple playoff spots. So the fact that Odunze just didn't do anything, which is super weird, didn't matter because Brock Bowers certainly did a whole lot of things. He was the tight end one, not shockingly. You did have the quarterback one on your bench. You probably would have been the top scorer of the week if you looked to throw him in. Not that Goff did a horrible job, but I would have taken the 38 points personally. Cincinnati's defense, I mean, maybe you would have known, maybe not. Doesn't matter. You got the W, and like I said, it was a big one. Ben still hanging on to top 5, so no need to sweat quite yet. Speaking of just hanging on, just with my fingernails here, trying to keep myself in the playoffs. Justin Underhill there, he tried to put me back, but then unfortunately, he decided to start a quarterback who got hurt. I don't think he meant to, but that's just certainly what he did. And instead, he could have played Flacco, who was the QB2. Things would have been slightly different here and a little bit tighter for sure, although I maybe would have just still dodged the bullet. He did also have the wide receiver 4. And I think in general, that was pretty much it for the top scorers here. So you did all right. Certainly, like I said, your one bench move could have saved you. On my side, it was a have and have not week. I had the running back one, the wide receiver one, and everybody else pretty much let me down. Except for Travion Henderson. He actually did something for the first time in a little while. So that was neat. When it rains, it pours, Horst, and it definitely rained and poured on you. You had some injury issues, and you're going to have some bye issues coming out of this. You did, unfortunately, also have the person who went off was on your bench. DJ Moore was the wide receiver 3. On the flip side of the coin, Jake, you made the right starts here. You had obviously your boy Josh was the QB 4. T. Higgins was a good flex. He was the wide receiver 2. And that combined with some okay performances, not the injury, that's going to be a bit of an issue. And I should also mention Houston's defense was just outside of that top 5, but they've been doing quite well in general. So that was more than enough. Not a lot of nail biters this week, and this one was certainly the worst of all of the kind of matchups. At least if you were watching, it was over pretty quick. Sorry, buddy. Better luck next week, Horst. This is one of those rare ones. Not the win. John's on fire, 8-1, looking at number 1, and probably looking at another week or two if he can keep winning of locking up that top spot or certainly locking up a bye. But if you go through, a bunch of his guys were top 10, but not top 5. So he just kind of did well and well enough to get through. B, on the other hand, not so much. I mean, on your side, huge pickup. The running back, I believe, was running back 3, and you did make one bad call. Kincaid was the tight end 3. Although I don't know how much that really saves you. It just seems like you got 1 or 2 guys going off each week, B, but you haven't put it together. But 3 and 6, as we're going to see, is not out of it yet. And like I said, Waylon, you might be locking this league down pretty quick if you keep going like this. I've made mention to it a couple times now. These teams on the way out, you're definitely going to need to go for a run because you do have the point differential and the wins, but we've got 5 weeks left, so you got a shot at it. All of us in the top 6, we just got to keep winning and chipping away. But a week like this with the buys the way that they are, it is going to be tricky. Matchups are going to matter a lot, so hypothetically, maybe this isn't the best time to play the number 1 team in the league, or maybe it is. I'm not so sure. Hopefully, the predicteds are remaining right now somewhat closer. Hopefully, that means we got 1 or 2 close matchups in this week, because it's always interesting when it comes down to the Monday Nighter. Said it a couple times, but I'm going to say it one more. Your matchups next week are really going to matter. If you had one of the key people on your bye weeks, this is going to be a scramble to make sure you've got the right people in. Injuries are playing a huge role here, and 5 weeks left. So if you're going to go for a run, now's the time. Best of luck, everybody.